When I was a public school teacher, particularly at the high school, kids always ask me, what do you teach? Now, you probably ask that to your teachers here. What do you teach? So I'm going to tell you through a story what I teach. So this happened in 3rd grade at Oakwood Elementary School in Preston, Idaho. Mrs. Smith was my teacher. Mrs. Smith was great. This is back when you could get a hug from your teacher. And she hugged us every day when we came to the classroom. It didn't matter what you looked like, what you smelled like. It didn't matter to Mrs. Smith. She always gave us a hug. Now, October of that year, we had a new student moving in. His name was Stephen Murphy. And Stephen didn't look like us, right? His clothes were too big. I remember his shoes were like Sunday shoes all the time, never wore tennis shoes. His hair was flat in some places, up in others, and he always smelled terrible. And Mrs. Smith knew, I think, instinctively that Stephen wasn't going to fit in. So she asked me and a couple of my friends to really be nice to Stephen. Treat him with some dignity and respect. He's new to our building, new to our class. And so we didn't do that. Because I saw an opportunity to make fun of someone who was different than me, right? And so my friends and I, instead of doing what Mrs. Smith asked us to do, bullied Stephen. And I remember one time in particular out on the playground, we beat him up. And I think about Stephen often because he moved away Christmas of that year and I've never seen him again. I've always wondered what happened to him as a result of what myself and my friends did to him. So when somebody asks me why I teach because I never want to see a Stephen in my own classroom. I don't want to see someone who is bullied or treated disrespectfully because of who they are. And honestly, if you think about your own life, there's things that we regret, right? And our regrets can sometimes be the greatest motivator for what we want to do in our lives. I did not realize that until I was driving to BYU-I to teach a night class in probably 1998. This story came back to me and I realized that that's the reason I teach. I don't want to see any other Stephen Murphys in my class. And that motivated me to become a teacher. That's story number 1. Find your passion. Find something that drives you, whether it's a regret or something that you love to do that will drive you for the rest of your life. Story number 2. Okay. When I went to college, I worked at Patriot Farm. 6.5 years of my life that I will never get back. Okay, now, anyone eating Pepperidge Farm cookies? Okay, Milano. They're like oval-shaped cookies. Those are not put together by a machine. You have to hand put those together. So there's a belt right here that comes down, the chocolates face up. And then right up here is a belt where the tops are, we call them caps. They have mint or orange or raspberry or double chocolate or whatever. But you take those and you put them on these cookies all night long, 8 hours a night, 6 days a week, right? 52 weeks a year. I'm bored, right? And I'm complaining to my wife. This job is terrible. I hate it. I can't wait to get through school so I can get out and do something that I want to do, not what I have to do here at Pepperidge Farm. So maybe 1.5 years after I started working there, we had a number of immigrants come from Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And they moved into Logan. They were resettled there. Most of them were political refugees from the Khmer Rouge genocide in Cambodia. And a lot of them were older, and they didn't really speak English that well. And I remember being so irritated because I was doing their job and my job. They couldn't work fast enough. And I couldn't understand what they were saying. There was a lot of machinery noise. So it really irritated me that I feel like I'm doing their work and I paid my job on top of it. I'm complaining to my wife, and she just says the thing that I never even considered. Maybe I asked them about their story. I had never thought about that, right? So one night, I got the courage, and I was standing right next to Took Soon, who was about this tall. And I remember just going, all right, I'm going to ask him some questions. So I said, where are you from? And over the course of the night, this 8 hours, he told me this story. He was a doctor in Cambodia. And after the Khmer Rouge came to power, if you ever studied that history, he was targeted by the Khmer Rouge for death because anyone who was educated were the first people to be killed. So he realized he needed to escape Cambodia with his wife and his kids. He had 6 of them. And in their process of escaping, they had to cross Cambodia. They lived on the eastern side of Cambodia. They wanted to go to the west, to Thailand, to the refugee camp so they could eventually come somewhere else besides Cambodia. So, in the course of them crossing Cambodia, one of his daughters steps on a landmine. He's blown up in front of the family. One of his sons was shot by the Khmer Rouge as they were hiding one night. And then his last son, as they were crossing the river to get to Thailand, he tied a rope to himself, he tied a rope to his wife. He was first, she was last. He told all of his kids, hang onto this rope with 2 hands because they couldn't swim, and we'll get you across to the other side. One of his sons let go and was drowned. He spent the next 8 years in a refugee camp in Thailand before he immigrated to America. And I'll remember forever the last words he said to me. I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so grateful to have this job. Now all of a sudden my view of Took and these other people around him changed because I didn't know what he'd gone through, right? So the second thing that I'd like to leave you with is we don't know what each other is struggling with. We all struggle with things, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever it is, we struggle. And so we can't assume things about people that we don't know anything about. So treat each other with grace and dignity. The last story, I'm at the alternative high school, and we have a student that comes to our alternative high school with a folder about this thick. You have to interview to get into our alternative high school, and as we're in there interviewing this student, she says, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I don't belong here. And her file backed that up. Her IQ is 89, which is borderline mentally retarded. She had not passed a class in high school. She was now a junior, coming to the alternative high school, and honestly, I was concerned. As the assistant principal, we were trying to figure out if she would fit, trying to give her some success, right, so she can feel good about herself, but she hasn't passed any classes. So, Miss Jenkins and I, who were both English teachers, had an after-school class where students could just show up and write. And they would write, we would share, and then they could go home and do homework, and we'd meet the next week and they would share. It was just a comfortable environment. We got to know each other really well. So this student, we encouraged to come to this class. So it's been maybe 12 or 13 weeks. She sat in the back corner, right back there, and didn't do anything. She just sat. She didn't write, she didn't speak. So we're thinking, okay, this isn't working. But on this particular night, we read, Miss Jenkins read Papa's Waltz by Theodore Roethke, which is about abuse and neglect. Particularly about a father who's dancing with his daughter, and the daughter realizes that her cheek is rubbing against the same belt that her dad uses to beat her when he's drunk. That's the gist of the poem. And she encourages the students to go home and write about what that poem means to them. So it's the next class, a week later, and Miss Jenkins goes, okay, does anyone want to share what they wrote about this poem? And that student raises her hand. Now, I'm mortified as a teacher because, as you well know, if you stand up in front of your peers and make a fool out of yourselves, you're going to be teased incessantly. Right? It's just the nature of humanity, right? That's what we do. So she's walking up to the front of the class, and I'm just silently saying, please share something that means something. Don't embarrass yourself. When she stood up here and read her poem about her father abusing her, she started crying. And it was amazing. It was an amazing poem. There's a girl sitting right here who's got up grabbed her in a hug and said, "You're welcome here," right? And she fit in. But that's not the end of the story. The student hadn't passed the class in high school. From that point forward, she got straight A's. She was our valedictorian of our class, which graduated. So, never underestimate yourself or other people around you. Your label, how you look, how you act, does not define who you are. Okay? Now, the last thing I'm going to really encourage you is this. If you have stories that you've thought about as I've been talking today, it's always a good idea to write them down. Not only for yourself, but for people around you to be inspired by. You don't realize what your stories mean, right? Until you tell them to somebody else and they go, "Wow, I never realized that you went through that." So as a teacher of writing, write your stories. Because they are important to you, they'll be important to your kids, they'll be important to people that you associate with. Stories are what make us human, and it's so important to tell them. So thank you for today. And questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions?
What do you enjoy most about? What did you enjoy most about working at that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think most is that it was a family. At the alternative high school, kind of like this school, there's the feeling that this is home, it's family, and I really love that. But the expectations for kids were often low about the public school system. So when they were at the alternative high school, we could do amazing things. Like we sent a kid to Brown University on a full-ride scholarship. We sent an artist to Denver Art Institute, which is a pretty prestigious art institute, on a full-ride scholarship. So seeing students succeed outside of what their expectations are for them. Please.
What classes do you teach at BYU-I?
Yeah, so I teach mainly classes for English education. So if students want to be English teachers, young adult lit, like English methods class with reading and writing, and then English 150, which is composition classes for freshmen.
What's it like to teach college students versus high school students?
College students are much more like, I don't know, if they're there, they're there. If they're not, it doesn't really matter, right? Sometimes I get that attitude. High school students, for the most part, have much more energy. And I like the energy of high school students, even though it's squirrely at times, it's good. Yeah, right? Please.
What was Mr. Wade in high school?
I remember him being very quiet student, much like he is right now. Right? He hasn't changed much. No, he's a good student, for sure.
Do you have any, sorry, whoa, that's a lot of Mr. Russ. Do you have any advice for our kids, writing-wise? I think one of our big struggles is like, how do I get something from here down to the paper or the keyboard or whatever it is? Just a little something to get them started.
Yeah, that's great. How many of you like to handwrite? Anyone like to do that anymore? Okay. I just like to sit down in front of a notebook, give myself a timer, just write whatever comes to my mind. And if I can't think what to write, I just write I can't think until I can figure out something to write. If I'm on a computer, I turn off my monitor and just go crazy, let my thoughts blend out on paper. It looks crazy afterwards, right? It's all kind of out of lines because everything's misspelled. But it's just a way to dump what's up here onto the page. So that would be my suggestion, right? Just set yourself a timer, write what's on your mind. You'll find something to write about. Please.
What about Miss Smith? How is she in college?
Awesome. She's a dedicated student. Her interests really carried over to her passion. Do you know what her passion is?
She loves World War II.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's found that passion. And if you can learn anything from her, it is passion, right? What is it that you really want to study? Find that and go for it. That's a good question. Please.
So in most of your stories, you talk about a lot of people who face scholarships when they're trying to get kind of do you have any advice for everybody, like just all of us in this room, like how you stick on that course to find your way in life, even when you're faced with that hardships?
Yeah, that's a great question. Number one, I think, is you got to give yourself grace. You're not going to be perfect at what you do, but the persistence is the key, right? You just got to keep doing it. Give yourself grace, but also give people around you grace. Because people are all struggling. We all struggle in one way or another. And so we have to give grace to ourselves, we have to be patient with ourselves. We also have to be patient with other people. And as we persevere, I think those two things come out. Be graceful to yourself and those around you. It's a great question. Please.
How do you motivate yourself to keep living?
That's a great question. Sometimes I don't feel like writing, but I try to write for at least a half an hour every day. Whether it's, I like to write poems, I like to write creative nonfiction, but whatever you do, write. Maybe it's just a journal that you keep, but write every day, and it's just like exercising your muscles. And it's just like if you're a basketball player, which a number of you will recognize today, or a wrestler, you do it every day. You exercise those muscles. It's no different for writing. If you don't write every day, you're not going to be good at it. You got to do it to be a good writer. So write every day. It's a great question.
Okay, my question is this: how do students use, my fourth question, how do students use AI responsibly? It's a big deal, and I think could be a useful tool, and I see my English teacher smiling over here as well. We get a lot of submissions that are cut and paste from ChatGPT or whatever. You can even see the conversation at the bottom of it. How would you like me to tailor this so your teacher doesn't know you've used AI? You know. But how would you use it as a tool? I'm sure you see it at the college level.
Yeah, that's a great question. Grappled with that for a number of years. ChatGPT is a great thing if you don't want to use your mind. To me, it's as simple as that. Creativity comes from your heart and your mind. And if you use ChatGPT, you're shortchanging your ability to think and to feel. In other words, whatever you put on that paper isn't you. It's generated by a computer. So if you really want to get inside your head and inside your heart, you have to do that individually. You have to do that by writing out your thoughts, your feelings. Even in research, it's the same thing. You got to find passion for what you're doing. Otherwise, it's not good, right? It's not going to be good writing. It's not going to be a good research project. So don't shortchange yourself by using that shortcut. I tell this to my students every semester at BYU-I. You're not going to grow as an individual by using a computer. And if you want to grow as an individual, if you want to become a good human being, you got to use what God gave you, which is your mind and your heart. So I say don't use ChatGPT at all. Anyway. Please.
When you're grading stuff, what are the sets of progress?
Yeah, exactly what I just talked about. I'm in the middle of grading conferences, which I'm going to tell this to some of you, it will be the scariest thing you've ever done. I sit down with my students, they read their paper out loud, I give them a grade right there. So they read for 15 minutes and then I grade their papers. The best ones are the ones that have heart and soul. Like the question they've asked and they wanted to answer really means something to them. And so the experiences that they write about, the resources that they use are really, they feel passionate about it. Those are always the best papers. The kids who don't care, the kids who use ChatGPT, and I'll be honest, as a teacher of writing, when you read students writing and then they come up with big words in their essays. It's like, this is obviously ChatGPT. I had never heard you use that word before, and I heard you use it a lot. So you gotta find passion, and you gotta find right, something that you connect with in the paper, in the topic. Please. Is it easier to teach high school or college? Wow, it's different. I love teaching high school. If I could go back to the alternative high school, I would, in a heartbeat. But I've really loved working with students who want to become teachers, like Ms. Smith and Mr. Wager that wanted to become teachers. So it was just different grade level. I can't say that I like one better than the other, but they're both good, both really good.
Did you always want to be a teacher, or was there a different path before that?
That's a whole other story, right? I started out in architecture at Ricks College, 1985. Came home, served a 2-year LDS mission, came home and realized that's not what I wanted to do. Went to Utah, well, I met my wife at BYU, the typical BYU story. Meet your wife there. Then I repented. So those of you who are diehard BYU fans, I'm not a diehard BYU fan. I'm a Utah State fan, that's where I graduated. But I sat out and worked at Pepperidge Farm that 6.5 years that I told you about. 3 of those years I wasn't going to school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So at age 24, I went back to school and I had a teacher who just pulled me aside and said, have you ever thought about teaching? Which I'd never considered. So he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back to your high school English teacher. I want you to follow them around for a day and then come back and we'll talk. Tell me if it's something you'd like to do. So I met with Mrs. Catani, my high school 11th grade English teacher, who looked at me and said, are you sure you want to be a teacher? Because I sat on the back row and I didn't say anything in class. And she couldn't imagine me as a teacher. I said, no, it's something that I really want to do. So I went back to my professor, I said, I think I could do this. So it took me 6 years to graduate. So at 30 years old, I graduated with a degree in English education and I became a teacher. So it's never about the destination. It's always about the journey. If you get to what you want to do and what you love to do, if it takes you till you're 30 or 40 to get there, that's the key, right? Do something you love. That's always the key. So, yeah, it took me a while to get there, but I'm grateful that I did.
Okay, so something really sparked in me as he was talking, and if you know me, you might know what story it was, but I will tell you what story it was. It was the story about the unnamed dictator that he didn't name, and his name was Pol Pot. I was alive when Pol Pot was killing people in Cambodia. My son, Jake's father, went on a mission in California to the people that came here as refugees, and he said, Mom, every story was just heartbreaking. And just from the top to the bottom, it was heartbreaking. And I want you to remember this one thing. If you remember anything about Mrs. Infanger, this school is the result of my passion. And my passion is strong, proud, brave, and I would add, free. And I want you to remember this. What was Pol Pot? Pol Pot was a communist. When you hear these people with all of their beautiful ideas about the warmth of socialism and communism, you better have your hair on the back of your neck go up, because they kill people. You stood beside a man who had his children killed by a communist. They are not your friends. We are trying to teach you here in this school, socialism leads to communism. Communism leads to slavery and death. If you want to be free, remember what you learned here. And then you can choose. What do you want to be? Do you want to work at Pepperidge Farms? Do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to be an architect? I would love you to be whatever you want to be. You cannot be any of those things if you don't live in a free society. So thank you for sharing your story. Remember what you've learned here. It was born out of a picture of George Washington kneeling at Valley Forge. And I want you to remember it. And I hope that you will.
Okay, everybody, another round of applause for Dr. Poole. Thank you so much.